Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre. I'm your booktuber, bookworm, collector of books, whatever you want to call me. And today we have another book review, which will be one for the next couple of weeks because I am going on holiday soon. And so there will be a pause in the videos, but don't worry, they'll be back with more book reviews. Hopefully we'll come back strong and ready to engage even more. But yeah, if you're new, subscribe, like the content, tell me what books have you been reading, comment away, see if I can find something to read new over my holidays. That would be good. But so today we're reviewing another Wheel of Time book. Yes, we're back into the Wheel of Time. I know it's been a constant here recently, but it's just as we keep going towards the end, it just keeps reading faster and faster. But so today we're actually not reviewing one of the series per se, we're reviewing the prequel, New Spring. For those that don't know what Wheel of Time is, and if you don't know, I have further questions for you because what rock have you been living under? We'll get past those. But either way, Wheel of Time is a fantasy series, an epic fantasy series composed of 14 books. And this one that we're reviewing today is actually an extra one. It's a prequel set up many years before the events of Wheel of Time, but it's just as good, if I can say, and get ahead of myself. This prequel, New Spring, started off as a short story that was published between the books 8 and 9, or maybe 9 and 10, not sure. But eventually it was published extended and then published as its own book in 2004. And that makes it between the 10th and 11th book of the series. And that's why I decided to read it now, since I just finished book 10 and I started reading, before I started reading book 11, it would be a good time to just take a break, especially because book 10 was quite heavy in terms of slog. And so this one would be quite a refreshment into the Wheel of Time and bring something new, something different. This book has over 106,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it has an average score of 4.07 out of 5, which places it more or less amidst the middle of the pack of all the books that we've read so far in the Wheel of Time series. If your question is, should I read this book before or after the series, or should I read it in between? What is the proper reading order for this book in specific? My answer is, read it the way you feel most comfortable with. In my opinion, I read it in publication order simply because that way you already have a sense of the world, the characters, and you are able to catch a lot more of those hidden hints, those Easter eggs about characters that have shown up or that will show up in the future, but you have already a sense of who they are, what are their plans, and maybe you can even glimpse a bit of what might come in future books. On the other hand, I think this book, New Spring, is a lot faster, and I will speak about it in the writing style, than, for example, The Eye of the World, which is the first book of this series. And so if you start off with New Spring, you get kind of a momentum going, and when you reach at the first book, which can be quite slow for some people, then you kind of can keep moving ahead and trudge through these books that are more slow until you actually get the hang of it and get into the series. But the message is, I think either way you will enjoy this book. And what is this book about? Well, we're gonna enter the synopsis. If you want to hear, just stick around. If you don't, there's a timestamp. You just need to go to that time and you'll skip the entirety of the synopsis, and that way you'll jump right into the review. Are you ready? Let's go. For 3 days, battle has raged in the snow around the great city of Tarvalon. In the city, a foretelling of the future is uttered. On the slopes of Dragon Mount, the immense mountain that looms over the city, is born an infant, prophesied to change the world. That child must be found before the forces of the shadow have an opportunity to kill him. Moiraine Damodred, a young accepted, soon to be raised to Aes Sedai, and Lan Mandragoran, a soldier fighting in the battle, are set on paths that will bind their lives together. But those paths are filled with complications and dangers. For Moiraine, of the royal house of Carian, whose king has just died, and Lan, considered the uncrowned king of a nation long dead, find their lives threatened by the plots of those seeking power. Alrighty, with the synopsis out of the way, I'm gonna move directly into the book review. Not gonna show any of the scores of the other books since this is the prequel, it doesn't really matter. I'll show it towards the end so that you can see. But if still you're curious to know what the scores were for the other books, There's reviews I've done for the previous books showing around with the thumbnails or the cards that you can just go there, check the videos, then come back. Okay, but starting with the plot, prequels have an inherent issue, which is you know more or less how they'll end, because they have to end in a way that the first book gives a sense of how things start, right? That kind of makes it hard to keep stakes high, or at least to have plot twists that will surprise you and still be relevant to the main story. But the thing is, I think Robert Jordan was capable of achieving that. This book, which is a short one in Wheel of Time terms, has two major arcs. Both are quick and both have their pros and cons. With the first one you get a lot more political intrigue than action, but in the second one it goes the other way around. There's a bit more action, a bit of mystery as well, but not so much the political intrigue. I personally prefer the first arc simply because I like more of that subgenre of political intrigue, and also because that arc relates more to what I enjoy of Wheel of Time, which is the magic and the Aes Sedai and Tar Valon and all of that. And I still think that I was surprised in certain parts. I love seeing these characters that I know already and see their progression and the funny things that happens to them to end up in the place that they are in the first book. So overall, I'm gonna give this category a 4 out of 5. Next, we have characters. And this book, we actually get POVs of characters that we don't see much in the main books. And that makes sense, because in the books they are supposed to be these mysterious characters that we don't know much about, at least at the start, and then eventually we get to know them all, but they're supposed to be very mysterious, very powerful. But in this book we actually see the background of all that, and we see how they think and why they are who they are and what makes them act the way they do. I think there is significant growth with Moiraine, since we see them as an accepted and then going all the way up to becoming a full Aes Sedai and going on adventures, and that growth was very coherent and very well done. Regarding Lan, I don't think he had that much growth, but there was still some development in his character. But what I truly loved to see was actually the interaction between both of them, since we don't get that much of that in the main series, and also seeing how they behave as characters that are not that powerful in this book, because this book is when they first meet, and so they don't have that connection, that type of power over other people like we see in the main series. And I think that gives us a completely different side of these characters that the readers will enjoy. So for this category, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. Now, world building. I think for our seasoned readers, there will be a lot of information that we already know, and it will just be a repetition of it. But I think if you're reading this book as the first book of Wheel of Time, this will be necessary, it will be vital for your understanding. And I think Robert Jordan wrote it well, because it was simple, it was quick, it was direct, it wasn't like pages and pages of explanations happening, so we know how the world works, we know how the magic works, we know how people work in general. And I think the writing style was pretty good, because Robert Jordan was able to, from the very start, explain to us what an Aes Sedai is, what an accepted is, and what the role of an accepted is in this world. Especially because in the main series, again, we don't see much of accepted in the story. There's a part where certain characters are accepted, but that doesn't go for too long. And at the same time, we see the test to become an Aes Sedai, which is something that hasn't happened in the books, and so we actually get new information as experienced readers even, and of course that will have the advantage of making those readers want to read this book as well. And of course that test was quite original, it raised a lot of questions, and I'm curious to know more about it in the future books. I mean, I already know because I've read it, but I've forgotten details, and rereading really brings that joy of wanting to find out more again. We also get to explore a lot of the Borderlands, which we don't see that much up to this point in the main books, so I think Robert Jordan did a great job overall at world building. It was a good mixture between showcasing the world that he has and showcasing how the characters interact with this world. So for this category, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. Moving on to writing style, this book is a good book to get a taste of what Robert Jordan's prose is. Because I mean, it's a descriptive prose, the interactions between characters are usually witty, funny, and their thoughts are super interesting and reveal a lot about the world around them. I think, however, the pacing had some issues here and there, because I think overall, this book is fast action, fast paced, But there was a moment towards the last third of the book where I did feel a bit of a slump. And considering this is a short book, for me to feel a slump, it means that there was quite a problem with the pacing. But I mean, it was just a couple of chapters, and because the book is short, at the same time you can get through those chapters quickly and reach the climax of this book, which will lead you to the satisfaction that you want. So for this category, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And finally, our last category, which is enjoyment. I mean, I enjoy reading about Moraine and Lan, who doesn't? So being able to see them again and read their interactions in this new book, it's wonderful, and I couldn't wait to see that again. Especially to then see how things turn out to the main series, how we get to that point. Was I crazily trying to find reasons to keep reading and be able to finish this book as fast as I could? Not really, it wasn't that exciting, but nonetheless, it was still an enjoyable read, so I'm gonna give this category a 4 out of 5. And so we reached the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4 for plot, 5 for character, and 5 for world building, and then 4 for writing style and 4 for enjoyment. So that gives us a final score of 4.4 out of 5. It's a very good score. I mean, it's higher than the score Goodreads has at the moment, so I'm biased towards the positive for this specific entrance in Wheel of Time, but I do think that it has a lot of advantages, especially if you read it as a first book or if you read it in between the series. It's fast-paced, it's very short, so it's kind of a refreshment before you dive into the last parts of Wheel of Time. And as you can see, if you read this book first, of course you will have a bit of a decrease in terms of my scores between the prequel and the first book. However, the scores kind of stay similar. I go from 4.4 to 4.2 and staying around there. So I think it's a very good idea to start this book as the first book in the series. But of course, you might also read it to get rid of that slog taste in your mouth and then proceed to the final parts of Wheel of Time. Either way, I think you can't go wrong. So let me know, what is your preference? Do you rather read this book at the start or in the middle of the series? Comment down below, and don't forget, if you're new, subscribe, like the content, and I'll be seeing you soon, but not too soon because I'm on holidays. So I'll see you eventually, but keep hoarding books and keep recommending books, okay? See ya!